Let's all hoops, let's all hoops. Ay, what's the scoop? What's the scoop? What's the scoop? Ay, let's all hoops, let's all. Got the sauce, let's all hoops, let's all hoops, let's all hoops. Ay, what's the scoop? What's the scoop? What's the scoop? Ay, let's all hoops, let's all. Got the sauce, let's all hoops, let's all hoops, let's all hoops. Ay, what's the scoop? What's the scoop? What's the scoop? Ay, let's all hoops, let's all. Got the sauce, let's all hoops, let's all hoops, let's all hoops. Ay, what's the scoop? What's the scoop? What's the scoop? Ay, let's all hoops, let's all. Got the sauce, let's all hoops, let's all hoops, let's all hoops. Ay, what's the scoop? What's the scoop? What's the scoop? Ay, let's all hoops, let's all. Got the sauce, let's all hoops, let's all hoops, let's all hoops. Ay, what's the scoop? What's the scoop? What's the scoop? Ay, let's all hoops, let's all. Got the sauce, let's all hoops, let's all hoops, let's all hoops. Ay, what's the scoop? What's the scoop? What's the scoop? Ay, let's all hoops, let's all. Got the sauce, let's all hoops, let's all hoops, let's all hoops. Ay, what's the scoop? What's the scoop? What's the scoop? Ay, let's all hoops, let's all. Got the sauce, let's all hoops, let's all hoops, let's all hoops. Ay, what's the scoop? What's the scoop? What's the scoop? Ay, let's all hoops.
Yo, what's going on, Hoops Tribe? This has been a way to open the WNBA. We have seen some great regular season games to start, and I'm feeling energized. I just had a workout. I joined Sports Bra Fitness, and Kristen Straggs is the trainer. It's kind of like a virtual setup, and she was actually a trainer for a lot of names in the WNBA. And I always have to try to support women when I can, and I want to get in shape because watching basketball and playing basketball are two different things. And I got an upcoming match in Los Angeles coming up. I'm gonna give y'all some more information about that soon, but I have to make sure I'm keeping up with my own fitness while I'm critiquing these ladies about their game. You know what I'm saying? I would feel like a hypocrite if I did anything differently. Now, in this episode, we have a lot to talk about because a lot has happened. And I know that the hot topic is all the players being signed and waived. So I want to go through some of those names and talk about some of the developmental contracts because those are the new roster spots with WNBA teams. We often talk about they need to expand the rosters. That has been a topic on my channel over this past week. And the developmental contracts are a way to do that. And I didn't know that if a player is signed to this contract, they can actually play in up to 12 games a season. So some of the names that I want to throw out there and put on your radar is Chicago actually signed Aisha Coulibaly and Maddie Westbell to developmental contracts. Seattle signed Taina Mayer. The Indiana Fever signed Justine Passat. Connecticut Sun signed Ashlyn Jackson, and the Los Angeles Sparks signed Kate Martin. And that is a big one that I kind of want to stop on because we know Kate Martin got waived from the Golden State Valkyries. It was a bit of a shock for some because of how popular she is as a player. While some of her stats don't show her value, it was big for her to be waived from the Valkyries. And then to find out that the Valkyries signed Mela Sua. I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name. She's 25. She played at Duke. She's from Australia. And she scored 14 points on 83% shooting and hit 4 threes. She was 4 for 4 from 3 in the preseason game against Seattle. So the Valkyries ended up signing her over Kate Martin for developmental contracts. The Los Angeles Sparks see Martin is valuable and they went ahead and locked in. The Minnesota Lynx signed Liatu King, and I think that was a good signing. And I hope to actually see her in some of those games. But we know that Cheryl runs a tight ship, so I won't hold my breath on that. Phoenix Mercury signed Marta Suarez. There's a bit of controversy surrounding that because she was also waived by the Golden State Valkyries. And the Mystics signed Dariana Littlepage Bugs. So big, that's major. It's historic. These are the first players to be signed to such a contract, and some of them have already started to get some playing time. Coulibaly actually got to play some minutes in a regular season game. So to see that, we already know that players are being utilized, and to have that developmental space is going to be really good for the game, because all of these new rules in the WNBA are for the betterment of the game. I truly believe that, although there was some controversy from Nafisa Collier having that interview with NPR and saying that fans favor the offensive side of the game. And I took offense to that because as a fan, I don't know if it's different for me being a fan because I also played the game. I enjoy defense. I hold them equally because the 1v1 matchups that we get in the game of basketball is what excites me. Like, can a defensive player lock down the strongest offensive player? Because that says a lot about their athletic capabilities. So when she made those statements and spoke for the fans, a lot of us got offended and we weren't really, it's like once you make a statement like that, it's hard to hear anything else that you're saying. And overall, I felt her point was what most players and coaches have been saying throughout the season. They want consistency in the calls. They want more emphasis on freedom of movement. So looking at some of the new WNBA rules, they're taking emphasis or they're emphasizing freedom of movement and defensive 3 seconds. They're also emphasizing offensive fouls and screens. And that's something that I appreciate because there were a lot of fouls. There's a lot of offensive fouls that don't get called. And we saw that in some of the opening games that is not going to be the case this season. Flopping is now going to be looked at a little bit more closely, and how it's structured, you're going to get a warning for your first flop, and then the second one, you're going to get $100 fine. You're going to get $100 fine, and then every flop after that second one goes up by $100. And I'm really interested to see how they judge that, because realistically, players flop all the time. Like, I don't know what's going to make it feel egregious enough for them to call it, but flopping is also a strategy and is a part of basketball. Like when we're teaching kids to, screen or not screen, but when we're teaching them to take a charge, they got to sell that charge. So they got to fall. So I'm interested to see how they judge the flopping. And they also revise the technical fouls, the flagrant fouls. So technical fouls and flagrant fouls are now $500 for the first 3. And then it increases to $1,000 for techs 4 through 7. And then if you get to the 8th technical, it's $1,500 plus a 1-game suspension. And last season, Angel Reese hit 8 technicals, I believe. So that's going to be interesting to watch. That's a lot of money on the table for the league. Again, it's starting at $500 for the first 3, and then after that, it's $1,000. There's a lot of players that tend to pick up techs. Yeah, Angel, Caitlin, Skylar. So I'm interested to see how many coins are put into this pot. And when we're talking about the defensive side of it and how this impacts defense, I think that it's going to ultimately clean up defense. It's going to make players be better defenders and not be so lazy. It's also going to challenge the mental side of the game because now they can't let their emotions rule because it's going to cost them literally, like financially and within the game. So I think a lot of growth can happen here. And it's important when we're trying to interpret the rules. It sounds kind of crazy. Like, how does a defender play defense if they're restricted in this way, if they're restricted in how they're able to cut off players? And the defense is going to have to move with the offense. As a defensive player, you can't hold, you can't just kind of like stand in the way. Like we get taught to bump the cutter. But it's just going to have to be a strategy with it, and defense is going to have to move. I've already seen some defensive adjustments throughout these first games. Now, I did some math, and I'm already seeing some inconsistencies. While all of this sounds good in theory, how it's implemented is always going to be major key. How is this going to be done? How are they going to enforce it? And will it be consistent? So the numbers, There were 53 fouls called in the Indiana Fever versus Dallas game. There was one tech. There were 54 fouls called in the Mystics game versus the Tempo. There was one tech and one flagrant. The numbers kind of go down from here. 45 in the Seattle versus Valkyries game, one tech. 41 fouls called in Chicago versus Portland. There was one tech. 42 fouls called in the Atlanta Dream versus Minnesota Lynx game. There was one tech. But this is what stands out to me. There were 25 fouls called in the Aces versus Mercury game in one flagrant. 25 fouls called. Off the top of my mind, I know that's larger than a 40% difference from the Aces game to every other game being called in the league. In those 6 games, the Aces had more than 40% fewer fouls called, the Aces and the Mercury, because I don't want to make it seem like I'm just leaning more towards it. I'm speaking up more towards the Aces. This is collectively 25 fouls called. That is ridiculous. And that is the inconsistency that they've been complaining about for years. So while there were more fouls called and we saw some growth in the in some of the earlier games, there's still that discrepancy there. And one could say Alyssa Thomas and the Phoenix Mercury are a huge part. They're part of the catapult of these rule changes because of how physical that team can be in their style of play. So when it came to their game, for them to get so many fewer fouls called, how was that determined? Like, I don't understand how that happened. So with all of the techs and flagrants within just those 6 games, the league is going to collect $3,500. The league is collecting $3,500 in just those 6 games. There was 260 fouls total called within those 6 games. And I think that is something to monitor throughout the season. I'm definitely going to be monitoring it. And with more money comes more problems. So the players, they earning more money. They're going to have to spend out more money if they keep up with these techs and flagrants. Now, I've already mentioned the Atlanta Dream and Lynx game. I want to dive into that. And off top, I thought the Lynx looked really good offensively. They got rattled once ATL started to get their defense together. At one point, Atlanta was down by 17 points. And when you see that, you know that that's all defense. But when you look at Atlanta's offense, it was also their spacing and execution where they were just off. So this is the opening game for both teams. It's very hard to judge what it's going to look like moving forward. But I think for the Lynx, honestly, they just need more reps. Olivia Miles is one of one. She just started her Rookie of the Year campaign. Right now, it looks like a large gap between her and all of the other rookies when it just comes to holistically how she impacts the game. She just looks so fluid in this offense. It's like it was made for her. I really love the way that her and Courtney Williams play together, the way that her and Kayla McBride play together. And can we stop now? I'm going to actually bring up the clip. I want to roll the clip because we keep talking about WNBA players who compare to Steph Curry. And while I honestly do not believe there is a WNBA player that compares to Steph Curry, because in my mind, he's a god amongst men. I think he's the best shooter of all time. And it's not just him shooting threes, it's the way that he gets those shots off. It's how quickly he's able to play. And most importantly, I believe is his off-ball movement. Now, Steph Curry can impact the game by distributing as well. But when we think of Steph Curry, we think of Steph Curry, the shooter. Anytime someone gets a 3 off, it's from Curry range. That's why we're talking about Steph Curry. So when I'm making this comparison right here, I'm talking about Steph Curry's shooting and the way that he gets those shots off. And with that, there aren't a lot of players who can do that in the WNBA, but the one player who I'm putting up, who I'm saying is Kayla McBride. Like, look at this. Look, I got to bring it up because look at this.
Total
The
threes.
way that she's moving off ball, the quickness of the release too. We don't talk about enough how quick Curry gets these shots off, how well he's able to maneuver behind screens, and then she can also play make. If we want to throw in the playmaking aspect to it, she can give some quick dishes with the slashers for the Lynx offense. But really, it's the screen action. Nobody's coming off screens like that. But the biggest moment for me, one of the biggest shots, was the almost game winner to the Lynx until Angel Reese made the block. So it's in this next play. I'm pretty sure it's in the next play. She comes off that quick release. It's like she doesn't even get a clear shot. She doesn't even get a clear picture of the basket, and the shot is released. It's one fluid motion. The trigger, like we just saw this player in the NBA shoot a shot in the air. He didn't even come down. I believe he plays for the San Antonio Spurs. He received the pass in the deep corner and he just shot it while he was already elevated. That is the way that Kayla McBride's shot looks to me. It's just the lever. It's so fluid. I'm a fangirl of Kayla McBride. If we're talking about Steph Curry comparisons, that's the only player for me. And anything else, we just need to let it go. Okay. But when we look at Atlanta, again, the offensive spacing was the biggest thing for me, and that's going to come. These are players that have to learn to play together. Like Angel Reese was the biggest move that they made. Everyone else has played together. But when you add a player that is so integral to the offensive set, it still impacts a lot. I felt like Reese wasn't moving enough in the offense, and that clogged up some of the spacing. But towards the end of the game, you could see them work through it, and their defense ramped up, and the defense from Angel Reese changes everything. And when we talk about, is she going to be enough to help them win a championship? We already know the phrase, defense wins games. If the offense can catch up, if the guards can find some synchronicity, then with this intensity that she brings defensively, I think that they do have a shot at a championship, but it's all about playing together. When I look at Alicia Gray, Ron Howard, Jordan Canada, I think that these are key components to an offense that just has to keep, there doesn't need to be an alpha. People keep talking about, well, Atlanta has to figure out if their number one option is going to be Alicia Gray or Ron Howard. I don't think they have to figure that out. I think that they have the pieces for a system that could just be a high energy offense. Everybody's moving. Whatever is open is the best option. Alicia Gray shined in this one, but on any other night, it could be Ron Howard's night. And with Jordan Canada being the point guard that she is, she'll be able to read that and determine who's the one to keep going to. But they're an offense that doesn't need a focal point. And once they figure out where everyone is, their spacing, their spots, everyone's spots, is going to be, it's going to just transform everything. I thought that Medina Akkad was very strong in this opener. Like, she's coming in so composed. And that's one of the things that I was worried about. Like, I was really worried about how Akkad was going to fare in the pros, because there were times in South Carolina where I felt that she was timid, but she is very much so meeting the moment. 8 points, 50% from the floor. That's what you want coming off of the bench. And who knows, if she continues at this pace, she could even join the starting lineup. If she continues being able to put it on the floor as well. Like, I saw some good dribble drives to the basket. You know, you don't want her too far away outside. You know, you don't want her too far outside of the perimeter. You don't want her really bringing up the floor, but she has the capability to dribble well enough. As long as defense isn't hounding, she could get the ball up the court. Reese is another post player for them that's going to be able to push pace, and she did that in this game, and it really opens up the floor for those perimeter options that they have. And then what I didn't mention as far as like the signs in the beginning of the show, the Atlanta Dream just picked up Aaliyah Nye, and I think that is a major move for Atlanta. You look at Aaliyah Nas numbers, just throw that away because her numbers don't show what she's actually able to do. With Atlanta being able to add her into the rotation as a knockdown shooter, that's going to open up that transition offense even more. It's just going to do a lot for them. I think that, she's obviously coming off of a championship appearance with the Aces. She's gotten her feet wet. She's going to be a lot stronger in this Atlanta offense. I can already feel it, and I'm excited to see it in action. So I'm not worried about Atlanta. I'm not really worried about the Lynx. This was game one. They have a lot to be happy about, and they have a lot to improve on going into their next matchup. When you have these players that are young with the Lynx, they have Kasu, and they also have Olivia Miles, that youth in their system that looks really strong. You just get them more reps. Atlanta, the same thing. Medina Akat, just get them more reps. I thought some of Atlanta's best combinations in that third quarter, it was Tahina Pow, Naz Hillman, Alicia Gray, Medina Akat, Ron Howard. That set did really well in the third quarter and were a pivotal part in that run that they made. And how big was Tahina Pow? She had the game winner. She had the sealer for Atlanta. And it's a big jump. Tahina went from not being trusted in the final moments of the game to knocking down a game winner for the team. So there's a lot of growth that has happened in the coaching staff and her ability, and a lot of growth and maturity that's happened in her game. I think that she got into a little foul trouble. All of the players are adjusting to this new officiating. Hopefully that settles in once everybody gets a feel for how things are going to go. But major performance for Tahina Pow. And then in the fourth quarter, I really like the Angel, Ryan, Alicia, Naz, and Jordan lineup. So a couple of combinations that they can look to in the future. And I'm really eager to see how everything's going to pan out for this team as they continue to figure out what works best for them. Now, when we're looking at the Indiana Fever game, I think we have to automatically look at how they open the game. Well, before I even go too far and start breaking down what people deem as negative, I want to just go ahead and give the flowers to the Dallas Wings offensive system. I am impressed. I'm a fan. There's so much movement happening. If you haven't noticed by now, I am a fan of movement because when offenses are stagnant, it doesn't leave a lot of room for players to be great. But what you often see in offenses is that there's an ISO situation happening, or there's a 2-man, 3-man game happening on one side of the court. And the rest of the court is kind of standing and waiting for their opportunity and for things to happen. What I noticed with the Dallas Wings is that both sides of the court are moving simultaneously with the weapons that they have. And they have a lot of weapons. I'm talking about Paige Beckers, who looks supercharged right now. Those 15 pounds she gained in the offseason are doing her well because she's bodying the defense. Then they have Isaiah James, who's coming off the bench, an overlooked player who's going to have a breakout season. I think Zaza is going to have a huge season, and there was a lot of disrespect. I don't always go back and forth with people in the comment sections, but when we were having the conversation about Dallas and who they should draft, there was a lot of disrespect about the guards that Dallas already had in play. When it came to people supporting the AZ Fudd draft pick, they were acting like Dallas had zero guards and they weren't impactful. Isaiah James was impactful in her rookie season. Her and Paige set records together. So we got to put some respect on Zaza's name. And now she's just getting better. She's so much more confident. And with this type of offense, her 3-point percentage is going to go up. In fact, the team's 3-point percentage is going to go up. It already has done that. And AZ Fudd only contributed one three-pointer to that percentage. And that's no knock to AZ Fudd. When I bring up Dallas improving their 3-point percentage without AZ Fudd, is not to knock AZ Fudd, is to bring home the point that I was making when I was talking about the draft. The way that offenses are set up, the spacing and the movement in the offense directly impacts the 3-point shooting. So if you don't have the offensive system that can make stronger perimeter shooters, you're going to have a low 3-point percentage team. You can already see the impacts of how this offense is moving in that translating. And they also have Odyssey Sims, a player who we consistently scratch our heads about. Why wasn't she on a team to begin with? Why didn't the Indiana Fever sign her after she showed Indiana what she can do when they were making that push to the finals last season? Odyssey Sims cooked. She cooked the Indiana Fever. I think a lot of that is, whether they say it or not, it's just that I'm here type energy. You can't sleep on me energy. Stop sleeping on me. Odyssey Sims made a statement, and it wasn't just offensively, it was defensively too. And then you look at Jess Shepard and Elena Smith. Elena Smith was in some foul trouble. She couldn't win. I think that face mask greatly impacted her. It could have impaired her vision. I don't know, but she got in foul trouble really quickly. She had 3 fouls before halftime. But I think that Jess Shepard and Elena Smith also have something to prove. I don't know the details as to why they're no longer in Minnesota, but they are 2 players who I felt the Lynx could have absolutely held on to, especially Jess Shepard. Jess Shepard started her career with the Lynx. She made so many sacrifices for the team as far as, how fit she became from that Notre Dame physique to now. Although that also is going to impact her livelihood in the WNBA period, I can still see that as a sacrifice for the team. But I felt that Jess was trending upward, and she showed them what she could do when Nafisa Collier was hurt. She earned more time. I don't know what happened. I don't know if they tried to retain her and the players just opted out, but I think that those 2 players are players that the Minnesota Lynx should have held on to. And then there are also players with experience. They just tasted what a run to the finals feels like. So they're hungry players. So Dallas has a good group for this young core. And also Arike, I didn't even throw in Arike. And I felt like, first of all, I want to apologize to Arike because I didn't know how her and Paige Beckers were going to work. But if these if this regular season kickoff is any indication of how she's matured, this is going to be a really strong season for Dallas. They can absolutely make a playoff run. I think that she fits really well in this system. She has learned to rely on her team and trust her team. This is the most talented group of players that she's played with. I believe that. She has a generational talent in Paige Beckers. Isaiah James is just an athletic phenom. Odyssey Sims, she's learning to share the load, and we're seeing that in real time. She came off the bench and unrivaled. I don't know how much that impacts her mindset now, but I think that Arike is going to play some of her best basketball as a team, because that's always been the question. Like, we know that she's a great one-on-one player. We know that she's talented, but how well can she work in a system? This system, just from this glimpse, just from this one game, is going to greatly benefit her and really the entire Dallas team. And when we talk about AZ Fudd, going back to the number 1 draft pick, I think that we just need to go ahead and let go that conversation. I think that she was the right pick for this team. While she may not be really impactful in a way that people like to think the first round draft pick is going to be, people want to see the first round draft pick come in and be a leading scorer, be the rookie of the year. That's what we expect. She's coming into a system that suits her offense. It's a perimeter offense. They're looking for deep threes. They're looking to improve their 3-point percentage. She's one of the best 3-point shooters coming out of that draft. It makes sense whether she gets the time this season or not, it makes sense for the long run of this Dallas team. So when we're asking the question if Dallas is serious about winning, I think that when they hired Jose Fernandez, they made it absolutely clear. I'm not the biggest fan of Kurt Miller. I wasn't so sure about his decisions after that first fiasco at head coach, but I think that Dallas is turning a page. They want to be turning the page. You like what I did there? They're turning the page. They want to be contenders, and they can absolutely do it. The question is out on Lee Yuru. She's still struggling to be impactful. The capability is there. Like, we know that Lee Yuru is capable, but there's some kind of blockage. And I want her to get over that hump because I've seen her have really strong moments, but it's just not consistent. Now, when I look at the Indiana Fever, I think that the first 3 possessions of the game kind of set the tone for what we were going to see. And we have to take the little things seriously. We have to look at these things very closely. The very first Indiana Fever possession, Kelsey Mitchell scored in an ISO situation. Right out the bat now, Kelsey Mitchell scores. When you think of a point guard, you have to think of a player that can read the floor and also read the energy, read the vibe of the team. After that first Kelsey Mitchell bucket, she hits a tough ISO shot. The second possession, CeCe loses the handle on a drive. The third possession, CeCe tries to take Elena Smith one-on-one and kind of do the same move that Kelsey Mitchell did and missed, right? And she took a low percentage deep 2. That is a low percentage shot any way you want to cut it. Rebecca Lobo over the broadcast is like, good on the Indiana Fever for ISOing Caitlin Clark, trying to get her going. No, Caitlin Clark's job is to work the offense, is to read the floor and read her team. When you see that Kelsey Mitchell might start off with a hot hand, you feed Kelsey Mitchell. You don't then see that happen and try to create for yourself. And that is the imbalance that this offense is going to struggle with throughout the season. But when they get it going, you see that great things can happen because the offensive game in this matchup against Dallas for the Indiana Fever was solid. They scored over 100 points. They broke a record. Both teams broke an opening season record. So obviously they're doing well offensively. I'm not saying that they aren't, but I'm saying that if you want to be a championship team, you have to pay attention to these very small details. And that is a small detail that impacted the game at different moments. Although there were moments that they were getting into the flow of the offense. There was this action that Indiana does a lot of 2-man and 3-man actions. And I want to talk about this play that was another Kelsey Mitchell. It was a Leah Boston to Kelsey Mitchell this time, though. I'm going to bring that up.
I love this setup by Indiana. It worked against Dallas. So CeCe has the ball up here. Aaliyah goes and sets a screen for Kelsey Mitchell here. But instead of Kelsey Mitchell going over the screen like what we're used to, she goes underneath the screen and pushes Odyssey Sims here. The ball then goes to Aaliyah Boston. She's outside on the perimeter here. And then Kelsey L cuts to the cup, and she receives the pass from Aaliyah Boston for the easy 2, while you have the players in the deep corners really spacing the floor.
Now, if you saw that, you'll see that is brilliant basketball, right? Caitlin Clark is still initiating the offense. She gets it to Aaliyah Boston out on the perimeter. Defenses might think automatically, oh, Caitlin Clark is going to get it back. She's going to cut. But instead of Caitlin cutting, they get an L cut from Kelsey Mitchell, and Aaliyah Boston drops it off. That type of action, those are the type of sequences that the Indiana Fever have to see more of if they want to continue to be successful. Now, when we look at the broader scope, Maisha Hans-Allen was in the starting lineup. If you watch my preseason evaluation of this team, I never felt like Maisha Hans-Allen should have been a starter. I think that she gave them some strong minutes in this game. I'm going to be real. She was very strong defensively as far as bringing the energy and intensity. She very much so executed in the offensive sets when it came to taking over those mismatches. Alicia Clark, when she had Alicia Clark on her, she made sure to body Alicia Clark and get in for a basket. So she had a strong showing. But when we compare Maisha Allen and her performance to Michaela Timpson, that's telling you everything that you need to know. I think that Michaela Timpson should absolutely be in the Indiana Fever starting lineup. I don't know if the strategy is let the veteran set the tone and then Michaela Timpson comes in and, feeds off of that energy. But just from a basketball standpoint, when you're looking out for your guards, Michaela Timpson is a bigger target for the guards to hit. She runs the floor better than Maisha Allen. So when you have a Michaela Timpson, an athletic phenom, she's tall, you can get her the ball, you can just throw it up and she's going to go get it. That is going to be better for Caitlin Clark and Raven Johnson, really whoever you have running your offense. So just go ahead and get the baby some time. It's time for teams to start taking some of their youth more seriously. We're seeing it in different sectors of the WNBA, but I think that the Indiana Fever have to make that switch again if they want to continue to be successful throughout this season. I also thought just coaching wise, they were out coached because the mismatches. I mean, it comes to a point when Sophie Cunningham, like how long are you going to continue to let Sophie Cunningham get cooked by Paige Beckers? They really had no answer for Paige, Odyssey, or Arike. Arike was making everybody look like cones. Both teams left much to desire defensively. So, while the Indiana Fever's defense was bad, I also think that Dallas was bad. They'll tell you that themselves. I believe Paige brought it up in her interview with Holly Rowe that that's something that they have to improve on. But obviously, due to the result of the game, we can conclude that the Indiana Fever had the worst part of the defensive woes. And at some point, we have to be real about Caitlin Clark and her ability to defend on ball. So when you see players going on streaks, sometimes you have to sacrifice what she's going to do for you offensively and put in a player that can play both sides of the ball. That said, I feel like Raven Johnson could have had a few more minutes to at least hose down some of that Dallas wing heat. But again, this is early in the season, a lot of strong points, a lot of good things for both of these teams, a lot of things to improve on moving forward. Lexi Hull is going to have to adjust to officiating. I think Sophie did a decent job at adjusting her game and just knowing what you can get away with, kind of testing the limits. Damiris Dantas had a strong showing, but back to the drawing board. I think that they can fix this, and I think that they can be competitive. Listen, Indiana, I like to boo you, but this year I have alternative motives. You have one of my favorite players in the game on your team. That said, I want to see you be successful. So I'm going to be on you. I'm going to hold you accountable because I want the best from you. And that's my type of love. that is what I'm always speaking from. I want the best from all of these teams because really, I just want competitive basketball. But for Dallas, they also have to improve on their out-of-bounds plays. The Fever were really strong in that regard. Defensively, the Fever were able to defend the out-of-bounds. They forced 2 5-second violations on Dallas, and one of them could have greatly impacted the game. I also want to say that the Indiana Fever executed their sideline out-of-bounds plays really strong. There's this play where they do a stagger for Kelsey Mitchell. And one of the final moments of the game, Kelsey Mitchell came off the stagger. Odyssey Sims read it because it was a play that they used earlier in the game. Odyssey Sims read the play, so she kind of cheated over the screens. But then you got Michaela Timpson cutting towards the basket. So Kelsey was able to drop it off to Timpson at the basket. I also think the decision to have Caitlin take that 3-point shot at the end of the game for one, she wasn't set up properly. Her feet were not set to take that shot. And she hadn't really been hot in that quarter. Third quarter, if she was still riding that momentum from the third quarter, then yes, Caitlin Clark absolutely dominated in the third quarter, ended on a high note, but we didn't see that translate into the fourth quarter. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that was the best call to make, but when you think about how a player is going to look at this game and put it into action towards the rest of the season, Caitlin is going to think back on that missed shot. We often think about our losses a lot more than our victories. So hopefully she, takes this as a constructive thing so she can continue to get better throughout the season, because they're going to need her. And there were talks throughout the game where she was injured, something with her back. I didn't realize that her back was now a part of the injuries to watch with her, is her growing in her back. They're going to want a healthy Caitlin Clark. If she's not going to be healthy, then it's going to be another interesting season for the Indiana Fever and how they're going to be able to cope with that. Now, when I move on to the Aces versus Phoenix, I'm not even going to spend a lot of time on this game because it's not hard to tell. The Aces got spanked. Like, I was watching this game like, are you serious? This again? We already know what happened last season. The Aces started off on the struggle bus, had us all feeling like, man, we need to dismantle this team. So I don't want to start off with these big accusations and these judgments when it comes to the Aces, because I know what they can do over the course of time. But off the rip, their defensive chemistry is lacking. And that seems to be a reoccurring thing at the beginning of the season, finding that defensive chemistry, because it's not like they were shooting poorly. Like, when we look at the shooting percentage for Aces in that first quarter alone, even with them getting down 12-3, they fought back to end the first quarter 27-21. They shot 47% from the floor. Then you also think about the factor that the Phoenix Mercury are coming into this game charged up. They felt disrespected that the first game of the season was on the Aces ring ceremony day. And we already know what happened in the finals. They were swept. So a lot of emotions of probably anger running in that Phoenix locker room, while on the contrast, you have the Aces who just celebrated winning with a beautiful ring. Shout out to the Aces franchise, the owners. That ring is next level. It's 2 rings in one. They're able to take out the big bulky piece and have, it's not dainty, but it's a smaller ring that just looks like you could wear it more in just like regular fashion and not look too gaudy, but gaudy at the same time. Man, they spent a lot of money on those rings. So shout out to the ownership group in that regard. But everybody's feeling happy. We like, yo, we the champs, and we coming into this game and turn around and get spanked. It's a little embarrassing, but the Aces tend to like to get embarrassed. I also want to bring up, like, anybody who watches NCAA women's basketball and they keep up with the Gamecocks, I find it interesting that the Gamecocks, when they lose, they lose. Like, they get blown out. Like, and we're like, what just happened? I feel like the Aces have a similar thing. Like, the Aces don't just lose, they lose. Like, okay, 53 points last season. Wow. 33 points on the opening in the opening game of the regular season. Wow, like, what a way to lose. Win big, lose big is what I get from the Aces and from the Gamecocks as well. And those are 2 teams that I would openly say I'm a fan of these 2 teams. So I think that contrast is funny to think about. But for Phoenix, I was worried about Phoenix because they really didn't make a lot of moves that I think the general public, the general WNBA fans would understand. Especially when you're comparing it to teams like Atlanta, with teams like Las Vegas, who made big moves, with the Aces getting Kennedy Carter, Atlanta getting Angel Reese, and just these huge shakeups. Phoenix goes the international route and they pull in Nojic. Like, Jovana Nojic. And it's like these damn Serbians. Like, we got to deal with the Joker in the NBA. Now we got to deal with Jovana Nojic. And then when we think about the Olympics, man, Serbia almost knocked us off in the men's league, that is. So, but I love it. I love that we're getting so many looks to WNBA teams. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed, but there are so many different types of offenses happening amongst all of the teams. Like, we're getting a very strong variety. So when we look at Phoenix and what they're able to do, they're able to dominate inside with Alyssa Thomas. They're able to dominate on the perimeter now with the rookie Nojic, with DeWanna Bonner when she knocks down. Kalia Copper can hit you from 3 levels. They have so many strong weapons. Like, this is a team that can very much so go back to the finals. We should be worried. If you're not a fan of the Phoenix Mercury, we should be worried. When we look at the Aces again and the pieces that they have, Jackie Young scored 12. We already saw what Asia did. She had 19 points. Jackie Young had 12. Melissa added 11, and Kennedy Carter added 10. I think that the Aces are also struggling with integrating Kennedy into the system, or maybe Kennedy's also struggling with the Aces as a team are struggling to figure it out, and then Kennedy's struggling to figure it out. It's a lot of that, what happened with Jewel Lloyd and whether she should come off the bench or whatever. At this point, I may want to see Jewel Lloyd start in front of Stephanie Talbot. I don't know how much Stephanie Talbot is panning out, if this is going to be a successful move for the Aces or not. She can give you something defensively, but she's not knocking down in the way that I was anticipating her knocking down. So I'm interested to see what they do with their lineup there. But again, I'm not going to judge the Aces too harshly. I've learned my lesson. I've learned my lesson from last season. So when we look at New York Liberty, Connecticut has a game against Seattle. We'll find the results of that in a few. That this game is actually still going on while I'm streaming right now. But when I saw Connecticut, the first thing that I thought about is I think BG is getting too many minutes. I think that BG is going to be a strong player. She showed us that she can be dominant in preseason. Although, it's just preseason, I still take that. I still hold that to mean something. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. So BG showed that she can have bouts where she's dominant. But in New York versus Connecticut, I feel like she played too many minutes. That first quarter, she played like 8 minutes. I think that we got to cut that. Like, she got to play 4 to 5 minutes at a time. Like, if we want to make the most of her at this point in her career. And overall, I just don't know if Connecticut has the pieces right now for any of what they're trying to do to make sense. But conversely, the New York Liberty look better than ever. And they don't even have Sabrina yet. So the New York Liberty are definitely a team to watch as we continue to move into, as we continue to move through the season. Like, New York can very much so be a championship contending team. It's just so many strong teams all ready to start the season. Obviously, we're going to have to continue to watch. Health is also a factor, but man, we saw some strong basketball. We saw some strong basketball on the opening days. I want to kind of talk about what we're getting, like your way too early rankings. Like, do you already have a idea of who you're going to see in the finals? Does anybody want to make that way too early call? I'm going to check the chat really quickly. And while I do that, just going to turn on a little bit of music for you. So I'm checking the chat. It's just y'all conversing with each other for the most part. I'm looking forward to all of the matchups to come. Let's see, what are the matchups to look forward to this week. I'm checking the pulse on this Seattle Storm Connecticut game, and it's still close. Don't know if y'all are keeping an eye on that, but it's 74-70 in Q4 with just a little under 7 minutes to go. We also have the New York Liberty versus the Mystics. I didn't even get a chance to talk about the Mystics, and Sonia Citron is on Superstar Watch. She's going to be another player that has, I don't even want to call it a breakout season because she already showed us what she can do in her rookie season. I think she's just going to continue to elevate, but she's definitely the face of the Washington Mystics. They just got to turn it over to Sonia. This is going to be my first look at them against this New York Liberty team. I didn't get a chance to catch the game, to catch their opening game, so I didn't speak on it in this episode, but I have more to say about Washington later on in the week. We're also going to get another look at the Las Vegas Aces. They're going to play the Sparks, who I'm excited to see because the Sparks made a lot of changes, and they wanted those changes to be seen on the defensive side of everything. I think we know that all these players are capable of scoring, but did the moves that they made make sense for their defense, especially when we consider the fact that they traded Rakia Jackson, who is going to be, in my opinion, she's going to be one of the best offensive players in the league. So to make a big move like that and you trade away for Ariel Atkins, it had a lot of people confused. But now we'll get a first glimpse on the why. Like, will we see why they made that decision? I think that most of us who watch Rakia's game know that she could be better defensively. I think that she'll tell you that herself. Ariel Atkins is a bit of a stronger defender. And then when you look at positionally and what the Sparks already have, Rakia in terms of defense was the weaker link. So I think it makes sense. I'm excited to see Nneka Ogwumike back in a Sparks jersey. So that's gonna be nice. The Mercury are also on a back-to-back. They'll play the Valkyries. I think that the Valkyries showed us that they know what they're doing. And there's been a lot of talk about the Valkyries and the moves that they make, but I am a Natalie Nakase fan. I love her offense. I love how she's changing the landscape for teams in the WNBA to not necessarily have a focal point. While they have players that could go off on any given night, it's going to be hard to scout this Golden State Valkyries team because they really have a team of grit. They really have a team of players who just are undersung heroes who want to make a difference. When you look at their roster makeup just a few years ago, a lot of those players were players who got garbage time on other teams. Now these players are having an opportunity to start and to go on the run that they had last season and to bring a lot of that core back in. It says a lot about them, and we're just seeing them get better. Janelle Salon just went off in the last game off of the bench. So that shows you what the Golden State Valkyries are able to do. Caitlin Chen also had a good night, and there was a lot of talk about Caitlin. You remember Satu Sabley said she wasn't ready to be in the WNBA, and that might have been true at the time, but it's no longer true. She's definitely making her mark on the game. She's looking way more confident, and that's just going to help their offensive flow because Veronica Burton has already shown us that she's a name that we should be talking about. She is PG1, and she's like really leading and dictating their offense while being able to knock down. With Caitlin Chen playing this confidently, that's a strong relief for VB coming off of the bench. So I'm looking forward to see what the Valkyries look like against a Mercury team. Mercury are on a back-to-back. Fatigue could be a factor, but we'll see. And then later in the week, Tuesday, we have another bout of games. Now we're going to get Atlanta versus the Dallas Wings. That's going to be huge. Both of these teams are strong teams. I think that Dallas has an edge because they already have things figured out offensively. Will they be able to defend? That's gonna be the big factor. And when you look at the difference between Atlanta and Indiana, the way that they're gonna have to approach this game is gonna be different because I think Atlanta is gonna give you a grittier game, a more physical game than Indiana. It's going to be a little bit more scrappier. I don't know if Dallas scores 100+ points on the Atlanta Dream. So when they can keep the score down, that creates an advantage for Atlanta. I'm interested to see how that's going to look. The The Minnesota Lynx are going to get to play the Mercury. Man, the Mercury are moving. But so the Mercury are going to play Minnesota on Tuesday as well. I give Mercury the edge in that one. And then the Liberty are going to play the Portland Fire. I haven't really gotten a strong look at the Portland Fire. From what I understand is their coach is a heady guy. Like he's all into the analytics. He's all into the numbers. They want to be a 3-point shooting team. I don't know if he has the pieces to pull that off, but we'll see. I know that Chicago got a strong win over the Portland Fire. And I just don't know how to look at that right now. I don't know how to assess that. I know that Skylar Diggins and Camila Cardoso had a strong showing. I think that in general that Skylar and Camila connection proved to be strong in preseason. So this is exactly what I anticipated happening. I want to see it be consistent for Camila against post players that are a bit more proven and stronger. So I'm looking forward to the growth of Chicago, because I'm not wishing. I know a lot of people don't like Chicago anymore, and they're wishing ill will or whatever it is. Like, I want all the teams to be as successful as they can be. Chicago has a lot of players that I like to watch, so I'm wishing them success in this season. I want to see this type of play on another team. I do know at one point they did somewhat blow a lead. Like at one point they had a bigger lead and it kind of dwindled. So first game, get those kinks out the way, but looking forward to a strong year from Camila Cardoso. And while I'm on the subject of Cardoso, this week I'm going to be taking a deep dive into that 2024 draft class. There's been a lot of conversation about who's producing in that class, why are we putting expectations on certain players out of that draft class when we're not doing the same for others. We're going to look at the numbers. We're going to see who's actually been the most successful throughout these 3 seasons, and 2 full seasons, and now this 3rd season for that 2024 draft class. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today, folks. I want you to continue this conversation on the playback of this video. We're going to have a lot to talk about in the next episode. And also, very soon, I'm going to have a retired WNBA player on the pod. Not going to say the name right now, but get excited about that because it is on the way. And matter of fact, drop a name in the chat who you would like to see me bring on the show. On Thursday, I dropped the podcast with Angela Perry, ARP. She's a well-known voice in the women's basketball space. Who else would you like for me to collab with? I'd love to know your thoughts. Also, want to know your thoughts on everything we talked about in this episode. If you want me to talk about something specific, you can go ahead and drop that as well. Look out for more upcoming episodes. And as always, folks, let's talk hoops.